The year was 2847, and humanity had finally earned a small place among the stars. After many years of careful talks and patience, Earth's United Federation had been given observer status in the Galactic Council. This was the ancient governing body that had ruled the known universe for over 12,000 years. Hundreds of alien species sat in its chambers, making laws and decisions that affected trillions of lives across countless worlds. General Catherine Cole stood at the front of the human group sent to represent Earth. She was 53 years old and had spent her whole adult life serving humanity. She had started as a combat pilot during the Martian War, then became the youngest admiral in Federation history, and finally rose to become the supreme commander of all human military forces. Her hair was auburn with streaks of silver, pulled back in a tight bun. Her dress uniform carried 17 campaign ribbons and 3 medals for bravery. She had seen more battles than most people could imagine. The message had arrived 3 days ago. High Arbiter Vexen Thul of the Zoroth Dominion had demanded that humanity come to an emergency meeting. The Zoroth were the oldest and most powerful species in the Council. They had ruled galactic politics for thousands of years, and they made sure every other species remembered this fact. The message had been short and almost rude in its tone. Commander Daniel Price was Catherine's assistant and most trusted officer. He watched the massive ring station grow larger through the window of their ship as they flew closer. The station was a wonder of engineering, a giant wheel of shining metal and crystal buildings that housed representatives from over 800 different species. "They are testing us," Daniel said quietly. "The Zoroth have never liked younger species. They think we are beneath them." Catherine kept her eyes on the station. "Let them test us. We have passed harder tests before." Zoroth were a frightening species to look at. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and hard outer shells in colors of deep blue and black. Their eyes were made of many smaller parts, like the eyes of insects, and they seemed to see everything at once. They moved with a strange grace despite their large size, and their clawed hands could crush stone without effort. When Catherine and her small group entered the grand chamber, she knew right away that something was wrong. The huge circular room was normally filled with the sounds of hundreds of species talking and arguing. But today, it was completely silent. Every eye, every sensor, every camera was pointed at her. High Arbiter Vexen Thul stood at the raised platform in the center of the room. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, and his translator device hummed as he spoke in a language that human ears could understand. "The human group will come forward." Catherine walked forward alone. Her boots made echoing sounds against the polished stone floor. She stopped exactly 3 meters from the platform, just as the rules demanded, and offered a formal bow of respect. "High Arbiter, the United Federation of Earth is honored by your invitation. How may we help the Council?" Vexen Thul's mouth parts clicked together, making a sound that Catherine had learned meant amusement among the Zoroth. It was not a friendly sound. "Help? You do not understand why you are here, human. You are not here to help. You are here to answer for your crimes." The chamber filled with whispers and strange sounds from the alien delegates. Catherine kept her face calm and empty of emotion, though her heart began to beat faster. "Crimes, High Arbiter? The Federation has committed no crimes." Vexen Thul stepped down from his platform. His massive body moved toward her with surprising speed and smoothness. 3 cycles ago, a human merchant ship entered the contested reaches. This is forbidden space. The Council has closed it to all ships. Catherine nodded slowly. She knew exactly which ship he was talking about. "The ship you speak of was the Wandering Star. It was a civilian cargo ship that had a terrible engine failure. The ship drifted into the contested reaches while waiting for rescue. We sent a complete report to the Navigation Authority within the required time." "The Navigation Authority answers to this council," Vexen Thul replied. His voice was cold. "And this council has decided that your explanation is not good enough." From the upper seats, Catherine heard a voice she knew. Ambassador Lyra Ven of the Helix Confederacy was one of the few allies humanity had among the older species. She called out in a clear voice, "High Arbiter, with respect, the report was reviewed and accepted. This matter was closed." Vexen Thul did not turn to look at her. His many eyes stayed fixed on Catherine. The matter is now open again. The Council has proof that the human ship was spying in the contested reaches. It was gathering information about Zorth military bases. That is a lie, Catherine said. Her voice was flat and hard like steel. The chamber went completely silent. No one spoke to the High Arbiter in such a way. No one in 12,000 years had dared to call him a liar to his face. Vexen Thule took another step closer. He was now so near that Catherine could smell the sharp chemical smell of his shell. He towered over her, blocking out the light. You dare to call the High Arbiter a liar? You, who represent a species that has barely learned to travel between stars. You, who are younger than the buildings in this chamber? I dare to speak the truth, Catherine replied. She did not step back. She did not look away. The Wandering Star was a civilian ship carrying farm equipment to the outer colonies. Its crew was a family of 4, including 2 children. They had no spy equipment, no military training, and no reason to watch anyone. Your accusation has no basis in fact. Vexen Thul's upper arms unfolded from behind his back. The movement was slow and threatening. The Council has looked at the evidence. Humanity is found guilty of spying. The punishment is that you lose your observer status immediately. You must also pay 17 billion galactic credits. Catherine felt the blood leave her face. 17 billion credits would destroy the Federation's economy. It would set human progress back by hundreds of years. It would leave Earth weak and vulnerable to any species that wanted to attack. This is theft, she said. You have no evidence because there is no evidence. This is nothing more than a Zorth trick to hurt humanity before we become strong enough to challenge your power. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Vexen Thul moved faster than any creature his size should be able to move. His lower right arm swung in a wide circle, and the back of his hard hand struck Catherine across the face. The blow was strong enough to send her stumbling backward. The crack of the hit echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Catherine caught herself before she fell to the ground. Blood began to flow from a cut on her cheek where the sharp edge of his shell had split her skin open. She straightened her body slowly, her eyes never leaving the High Arbiter. You struck me, she said. Her voice was strangely calm, almost peaceful. I disciplined someone beneath me, Vexen Thul replied. This is my right. This is the right of any Zorth when dealing with lesser species. You will accept your punishment, human, or your entire species will suffer. 800 species watched in shocked silence. No one moved to help. No one spoke a word. Catherine raised one hand and touched the blood on her face. She looked at the red stain on her fingers for a long moment. The chamber waited, holding its breath. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted its prey. The blood was warm on Catherine's fingers. She could feel it running down her cheek in a thin line, dripping onto the collar of her dress uniform. The cut was not deep, but it stung with a sharp pain that made her eyes water. She blinked once, twice, and then the pain became nothing more than background noise. She had felt far worse in her life. Every being in the Grand Chamber was staring at her. Some looked horrified. Others looked curious. A few, mostly Zorith and their closest allies, looked satisfied. They expected her to fall to her knees. They expected her to beg for forgiveness. They expected her to accept whatever punishment the High Arbiter chose to give. They did not know Catherine Cole. High Arbiter, she said, and her voice carried clearly through the massive room. I am going to give you one chance to apologize. I strongly suggest you take it. The reaction was immediate. Vexen Thul's mouthparts began clicking rapidly, the Zorth way of laughing. Other Zoarth in the upper seats joined in, and the sound filled the chamber like the rattling of bones. Apologize? To you? Vexen Thul's translator struggled to capture the mockery in his voice. You are nothing. Your species is nothing. You have existed for a tiny fraction of our history. You have no fleet that could challenge our smallest patrol group. You have no weapons that could scratch our armor. You are insects, small and weak, and easily crushed. I will step on you whenever I choose to do so. Catherine nodded slowly, as if she was thinking carefully about his words. Then she turned away from him and faced the assembled delegates of the Galactic Council. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. I want everyone here to understand exactly what is happening. The Zoroth have made up fake charges against humanity. They have demanded money that we cannot possibly pay. And their High Arbiter has just attacked a diplomatic representative during an official meeting. She paused and let her words sink in. Many of the delegates were leaning forward in their seats now, watching her with new interest. Under Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, attacking a diplomatic representative during official business is considered an act of war. The Zorath know this law very well. They are counting on humanity being too scared to use it. Vexenthal's compound eyes seemed to narrow slightly. You would not dare. Catherine turned back to face him. Her expression had changed. The calm mask was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. High Arbiter, I have fought in 17 military campaigns. I have sent good men and women to die for causes far less important than this moment. I have seen things that would break the minds of your bravest warriors. I have walked through fire and blood and the screaming of the dying. She took a step toward him. Do you really believe that a slap from an overgrown beetle is going to frighten me? The insult hit like a physical blow. The Zoroth delegation rose from their seats as one, their hard shells rattling with fury. The word beetle was deeply offensive to them, comparing them to mindless insects rather than the superior beings they believed themselves to be. You will die for that, Vexenthal hissed. His voice had lost its mocking tone. Now it was filled with pure hatred. Many have tried to kill me, Catherine replied simply. I am still here. She reached into her uniform jacket and pulled out a small device. Several species in the nearby seats jumped back, thinking it was a weapon. But it was just a communication unit, a simple machine for sending messages. Commander Price, she said into the device. Start Protocol 17. Daniel Price's voice came through the speaker, slightly distorted by static. Protocol 17 is confirmed. General, message has been sent. Vexenthal's compound eyes flickered with something new. It might have been worry. What have you done? Catherine put the device back in her pocket. Her movements were calm and unhurried, as if she had all the time in the universe. I have just sent a message to every human ship, base, and colony in the galaxy. Starting now, all human forces are operating under war rules. All trade deals with Zorath businesses are cancelled. All Zorath ships in human space are being escorted to the border and sent away. And the Federation Council on Earth is being told everything about what the Zorath have done today. This is madness, another Zorath delegate shouted from the upper seats. His voice was high and panicked. You cannot possibly believe you can beat us in a war. We would destroy you in days. Catherine's smile grew colder. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. I do not need to beat you, she said. I just need to hurt you badly enough that the other species in this room decide you are not worth following anymore. She raised her arm and pointed at the assembled delegates, sweeping her hand across the chamber. Look at them, High Arbiter. Look at the faces of your so-called friends. The Helix Confederacy has been unhappy under your control for hundreds of years. The Ven Collective lost 3 colony worlds when you expanded your territory. The Crystalline Assembly has been trying to join the Council for over 1,000 years, but you keep stopping them. She lowered her arm. Do you really think any of them will help you if humanity starts burning your empire to the ground? Do you think they will risk their own people to save yours? They hate you. They have always hated you. They are just too afraid to show it. The chamber had fallen into complete silence. Catherine could see delegates exchanging looks, whispering to each other. She had touched something true, and everyone knew it. The Zorath had ruled through fear for too long. They had made too many enemies. And now those enemies were beginning to wonder if perhaps the time for change had finally come. Vexenthal stood very still. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed uncertain about what to do. His forearms hung at his sides, and his compound eyes moved constantly, looking at the delegates around him. You are bluffing, he said finally. Humanity cannot afford a war with the Dominion. You would be destroyed. Perhaps, Catherine admitted, but we would take a very large piece of your empire with us when we fell. How many ships can you afford to lose? How many worlds can you afford to burn? How long before your enemies decide that a wounded Zorath Dominion is easier to attack than a whole one? She stepped closer to him, close enough to touch. The question you need to ask yourself, High Arbiter, is whether your pride is worth the destruction of everything your ancestors built. Because I promise you, if you do not fix what you have done today, I will spend every remaining moment of my life making sure the Zorath Dominion burns. And I am very, very good at burning things. The blood had dried on her cheek now, forming a dark line down her face like war paint. She looked up at Vexenthal, without fear, without hesitation, without any sign of the terror that he expected to see. For the first time in his very long life, the High Arbiter of the Zorath Dominion did not know what to say. The Grand Chamber had become a place of chaos. Delegates were shouting in 100 different languages. Translators struggled to keep up with the noise. Security drones began flying in circles above the crowd, their sensors scanning for any sign of violence. The ancient peace of the Galactic Council had been shattered. No one knew how to put it back together. Catherine stood in the center of the storm, calm and still like a rock in a river. She watched Vexenthal carefully, studying his body language, looking for any sign of weakness. She had spent her whole life reading enemies, learning to see the fear that hid behind their anger. Vexenthal raised all four of his arms, and slowly the chamber began to quiet down. The delegates returned to their seats. The shouting faded to whispers. Even the security drones seemed to relax slightly. "You make bold claims," the High Arbiter said to Catherine. His voice was steady again, controlled. "But claims are not actions. You speak of war, but you have not declared it yet. You threaten punishment, but you have not given any. I think you are lying about your strength, human. I think you came here with nothing but words, and words cannot hurt the Zorath's dominion." Catherine thought about this for a moment. She tilted her head slightly to one side, as if considering his argument. "You are right," she said finally. "Words cannot hurt you, but I am not really a words person." She stepped forward, moving closer to him until less than a meter separated them. She had to look up to see his face, but she showed no fear at his massive size. "High Arbiter Vexenthal, I challenge you to personal combat under the ancient rules of the Galactic Charter. The winner decides the outcome of this argument. If you win, humanity accepts all charges and all punishments. If I win, all charges are dropped, humanity gets full council membership. And you apologize in public for what you did today?" For 1 heartbeat. 2 heartbeats, 3 heartbeats. The chamber was absolutely silent. Then the noise exploded again, louder than before. The ancient rules were something most delegates had forgotten even existed. They came from the earliest days of the council, when arguments between species were often settled through single combat between champions. It was a brutal system, belonging to a more violent time. The rules had not been used in over 6,000 years. Most delegates had assumed they had been removed from the charter long ago, but they had not been removed. They were still written in the charter, in the same ancient language that had been used to create it. And under these rules, a challenge from one species representative to another could not be refused. To refuse was to give up and lose the argument entirely. Vexenthal's mouthparts worked silently for several seconds. Catherine could see him thinking, calculating, trying to find a way out of the trap she had set, but there was no way out. The rules were clear. Then he began to laugh. It was a harsh clicking sound that echoed through the chamber and made several nearby species flinch away. "You challenge me to combat? You." His voice dripped with contempt. Soft-skinned animal with no natural weapons. "No armor to protect you? No poison in your blood? This is your great plan?" Catherine did not move. "Do you accept, or do you give up?" "I accept with great pleasure," Vexenthal replied. His forearms spread wide, showing the sharp claws at the end of each finger. "I will tear you apart with my bare hands, and your species will finally learn its proper place in the universe. You will die screaming, human, and I will make sure every being in this galaxy sees it happen." The announcement of the combat spread through the station like fire through dry grass. Within minutes, every species on the station knew what was happening. The ancient arena, unused for thousands of years except for ceremonies, was being prepared for real combat. Workers rushed to clean the stone floor and check the safety barriers. Medical teams from dozens of species stood ready, though most believed there would be nothing they could do. For the human female, Catherine walked through the corridors of the station, followed by Daniel Price and a small group of human guards. Word had already reached the human settlements throughout the galaxy. Messages of support flooded in from colony worlds and space stations and ships traveling through the dark between stars. "You do not have to do this," Daniel said quietly. "We could find another way. We could negotiate." Catherine shook her head. "There is no other way. The Zorath have been bullying the galaxy for too long. They think no one will ever stand up to them. They think they can do whatever they want without consequences." She smiled slightly. "I am going to show them that they are wrong. He is nearly 8 feet tall. He has 4 arms. His shell is harder than steel. And you want to fight him with your bare hands. I have fought worse." Daniel stopped walking. Catherine turned to look at him, and she saw the worry in his eyes. He had served under her for 15 years. He had seen her lead armies and win battles that should have been impossible. But he had never seen her face something like this. "Catherine," he said, using her first name for the first time in years, "please, let me fight him instead. I am younger, stronger. I have a better chance." Catherine walked back to him and put her hand on his shoulder. "Daniel, you are a good soldier and a better friend. But this is not about winning or losing. This is about sending a message." The High Arbiter of the Zoroth Dominion slapped a human woman in front of the entire galaxy. A human woman needs to be the one who answers that insult. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "Besides, I have been waiting for an excuse to punch that overgrown beetle for the past 3 hours." The arena was packed with delegates from every corner of the galaxy. Beings of all shapes and sizes filled the rising tiers of seats, their eyes fixed on the circular pit below. Giant screens had been set up throughout the station so that those who could not fit in the arena could still watch. Across the galaxy, billions of beings tuned into news feeds. Watching the historic event unfold, Catherine stood at the entrance to the arena, looking down at the stone floor below. It was stained with ancient marks that could only be blood. She thought about all the warriors who had fought and died in this place over the thousands of years. She wondered if any of them had felt as calm as she did now. A memory came to her, unbidden. She was 12 years old, standing on the surface of Luna, watching rescue workers pull her father's body from the collapsed mine shaft. She remembered the way her mother had screamed. She remembered the way her own tears had frozen on her cheeks in the cold lunar air. She remembered making a promise to herself that day. Never again. Never again would she be helpless. Never again would she be weak. Never again would she stand by, watch while someone she loved was hurt. She had spent the next 40 years keeping that promise. Catherine took a deep breath and stepped forward into the arena. The crowd noise faded to a distant hum. Her heart beat slow and steady in her chest. Her muscles relaxed, ready for action. Her mind became clear and empty, focused only on what needed to be done. Across the arena, a door opened, and Vexen Thul descended into the pit. He had removed his ceremonial robes, showing the full power of his body. His shell gleamed under the arena lights, blue-black and polished like stone. His 4 arms hung at his sides, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal. The crowd fell silent. The 2 fighters faced each other across the stained stone floor. The human woman, small and soft and seemingly helpless. The Zoroth High Arbiter, towering and armored and filled with the confidence of a predator about to catch its prey. "Any last words?" Vexen Thul asked. Catherine settled into a fighting stance that she had learned decades ago. It was an ancient human technique, designed not for sport or exercise, but for killing. "Just one," she said. "Begin." The signal to begin rang through the arena, a single clear tone that seemed to hang in the air forever. Catherine had time to take one breath, to feel her feet solid against the stone floor, to see every detail of the monster standing across from her. Then Vexen Thul charged. He moved like a wave of destruction. all four arms spread wide to catch her in an unbreakable grip. His clawed feet tore chunks from the stone floor as he ran. His compound eyes blazed with hunger and hatred. He was fast, impossibly fast for something so large, and in 2 heartbeats he had crossed half the distance between them. But Catherine was faster. She dropped low at the last possible moment, sliding beneath his grasping arms like water flowing around a rock. As she passed under him, she drove her elbow into the back of his lower right knee with every ounce of strength in her body. The joint was one of the few weak points on a Zorth body. The armor plates met, and the flesh beneath was softer. Vexen Thol stumbled. His leg buckled under him, throwing him off balance for just a second. Catherine was already moving. She spun on her heel, planted her feet, and delivered a crushing kick to his midsection. The impact would have killed a normal human being. It would have caved in ribs and ruptured organs. Against Vexen Thol's armored body, it only pushed him backward a few steps, but it proved something important. It proved that she could touch him. The crowd had gone completely silent. Every being in the arena was staring with wide eyes and open mouths. The human had not died in the first second. The human had actually landed blows against the High Arbiter. This was not supposed to happen. Vexen Thol recovered quickly. He turned to face her, and now there was something new in his compound eyes. It was not quite fear, but it was definitely surprise. "You are quick," he admitted. "Quicker than I expected." "I have had good teachers," Catherine replied. She was breathing hard, but her stance was steady. "And bad enemies, it will not be enough."
Excellent.
Thol spread his forearms wide. "You surprised me once. It will not happen again. Your little attacks cannot hurt me. My shell is stronger than your weak human bones."
Ice.
"Maybe," Catherine said. "But I noticed something just now. When you spread all four arms like that, you leave your throat open for about half a second." Vexen Thol's mouthparts clicked together. "You think you can reach my throat? My armor there is 2 centimeters thick. Your soft fingers could never break through it." "Your armor is thick," Catherine agreed. "But the skin between the plates is much thinner, much softer." She bent down and picked up a handful of dust from the arena floor. It was a strange thing to do, seemingly pointless. Some of the delegates watching thought she had gone crazy with fear. Vexen Thol laughed. That harsh clicking sound that Catherine was beginning to hate. "What is your plan, human? To throw dirt at me? I expected better from the great General Catherine Cole." He charged again. This time Catherine did not try to dodge. She met his charge head-on, throwing the dust directly into his face. The fine particles filled the air around his head, coating his compound eyes with grit and debris. The Zorith were proud of their superior vision. Their compound eyes could see things that human eyes could never detect. But those same eyes were no more protected against dust than the eyes of any other species. Vexen Thol's vision blurred and clouded. He could not see clearly. He swung his arms wildly, trying to catch her with a lucky blow. His claws cut through the air with enough force to slice through steel. If any of those blows had connected, Catherine would have died instantly, but none of them connected. Catherine stepped inside his reach. Moving past his flailing arms into the space right against his body, her left hand grabbed his upper right arm and used it as a support. Her right hand, with all the fingers pressed together into a hard point like a blade, shot forward with every bit of strength she had left. It struck the thin skin between the armor plates of his throat, and it kept going. The sound that Vexen Thol made was not quite a scream. It was more like the sound of air escaping from a broken pipe, wet and gurgling and wrong. His compound eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. Blue blood, thick and dark like oil, began to pour from the wound in his throat. Catherine pulled her hand back. It was covered in blue blood up to the wrist. The High Arbiter swayed on his feet. His forearms reached up toward his throat, trying to stop the bleeding, but the wound was too deep. Too much damage had been done. His movements became weaker and more uncertain with every second that passed. The crowd had erupted into noise. Delegates were screaming in 100 languages. Some were cheering. Some were crying out in horror. The Zorith and the audience were frozen in place, unable to believe what they were seeing. Their High Arbiter, the most powerful being in their civilization, was dying in front of them. "This is impossible," Vexenthul gurgled. His voice was weak and wet, barely audible over the noise of the crowd. "You are nothing. You are insects. You cannot do this." Catherine looked up at him without pity, without mercy, without any of the softness that humans sometimes showed to defeated enemies. "We are humans," she said, "and we do not kneel." She reached up and grabbed both sides of his head. Her hands found the gaps in his armor, the places where his shell was weakest. She could feel the strange texture of his skin beneath her fingers, the warmth of the blood that still pumped through his body. "When I was 12 years old," she said, her voice quiet but steady, "I watched my father die in a mining accident. I could not save him. I was too young, too weak, too helpless." She tightened her grip. "I promised myself that day that I would never be helpless again. I would never let anyone hurt the people I love without fighting back." Vexenthul tried to speak, but only blood came from his mouth. "You hurt my people today," Catherine continued. "You threatened my species. You've tried to destroy everything that humanity has worked so hard to build." She pulled his head down toward her, until their faces were only inches apart. "And you thought you could do it without consequences. You thought we would just accept it. You thought we were weak?" She smiled. And it was the coldest smile that anyone in that arena had ever seen. "You were wrong." Catherine twisted her hands with a sudden, violent motion. The crack of Vexenthul's neck breaking echoed through the arena like thunder. His body went limp instantly, and she released him. He fell to the stone floor with a crash that shook the ground beneath her feet. High Arbiter Vexenthul, ruler of the Zoroth Dominion, the most powerful being in the known galaxy, was dead. Catherine stood over his body for a long moment. Her arms hung at her sides. Blue blood dripped from her fingers onto the stone floor, mixing with the ancient stains of warriors who had fought and died here thousands of years ago. Then she raised her head and looked at the crowd. "Under the ancient rules," she said, and her voice carried clearly through the shocked silence, "victory is mine. All charges against humanity are dropped. The United Federation of Earth claims full membership. In the Galactic Council?" She stepped over Vexenthul's body and began walking toward the exit. "And anyone who wants to argue about it is welcome to step into this arena and face me." No one moved. No one spoke. No one even breathed. Catherine Cole, General of Humanity, walked out of the arena without looking back. The news spread across the galaxy like a wave of fire. Within hours, every inhabited world knew what had happened. Within days, the story had become legend. A human woman, small and soft and seemingly helpless, had killed the most powerful being in the known universe with her bare hands. The Zoroth Dominion fell into chaos immediately. Vexenthul had ruled with absolute authority for over 300 years. He had crushed all opposition within his own species and had never trained a successor. When he died, he left behind a power vacuum that his generals and advisors immediately began fighting to fill. The first civil war started within a week. The second started a month after that. Old grudges that had been held in check by Vexenthul's iron fist suddenly exploded into violence. Zoroth fought against Zoroth across 100 worlds, and the empire that had dominated the galaxy for 12,000 years began to crack and crumble. Catherine watched the news reports from her office on Earth. She took no joy in the destruction. War was always terrible, even when it happened to enemies. But she understood that this chaos was necessary. The Zoroth had held the galaxy in fear for too long. Their fall would create space for new powers to rise, new alliances to form, new possibilities that had never existed before. The Galactic Council held an emergency session 3 days after the combat. Catherine attended, though she expected to face hostility from the other species. Many of them had been allies of the Zoroth, or at least pretended to be. She thought they might try to punish humanity for what she had done. She was wrong when she entered the Grand Chamber. The delegates rose to their feet. At first, Catherine thought they were standing to protest or to leave. But then she realized that they were applauding. Hundreds of species, beings of every shape and size and color, were clapping and cheering and making whatever sounds their bodies used to express approval. Ambassador. Lyra Venn of the Helix Confederacy was the first to speak. Her voice rang through the chamber with fierce pride. For 6,000 years, the Zorath had bullied this council. They have stolen our resources, occupied our worlds, and killed our people. And for 6,000 years, we have been too afraid to stop them. She turned to look at Catherine. One human woman showed more courage in a single day than all of us have shown in 60 centuries. One proposed that the United Federation of Earth be granted full council membership immediately. With all rights and privileges, the vote was unanimous. In the months that followed, humanity's position in the galaxy changed completely. Species that had ignored humans before now sought their friendship. Trade deals were offered on terms that would have been impossible just a year earlier. Young beings from across the galaxy applied to study at human universities. Wanting to learn the secrets of the species that had toppled the mighty Zeroth, Catherine received offers from a dozen worlds to settle there. She was offered positions of power that would have made her one of the most important beings in the galaxy. She refused them all. Her home was Earth, and her duty was to her own people. But she did accept one invitation: the Crystalline Assembly. The species that the Zorath had blocked from council membership for over 1,000 years asked her to speak at their capital world. They wanted to honor the human who had freed them from Zorath oppression. Catherine traveled to their world, K, a planet of glass and light where everything seemed to glow from within. The crystalline beings were beautiful in a way that defied human description. Their bodies made of living crystal that sang softly as they moved. Their leader, a being called the First Resonance, met with Catherine privately before the public ceremony. "We have studied humans since we first learned of your species," the First Resonance said. Its voice was like music, each word a different note in a complex melody. "We could not understand how such small, soft, short-lived creatures could accomplish what you accomplish. You have no natural armor. You have no claws. You cannot fly or breathe underwater or survive in the cold of space." Catherine smiled. "You are right. We have none of those things. And yet you defeated the High Arbiter of the Zorath. You killed him with your bare hands. How is this possible?" Catherine thought about the question for a long moment. It was something she had considered many times since that day in the arena. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day," she said finally. "Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged us. The weather froze us in winter and burned us in summer. We should have died out 1,000,000 years ago. We had no special advantages. We were just clever apes with too much curiosity and not enough sense." She paused, remembering her father, remembering the promise she had made as a child. "But we did not die. We survived. We adapted. We learned to use tools when our bodies were not strong enough. We learned to work together when we could not succeed alone. We learned to keep fighting even when there was no hope of victory." She looked at the First Resonance with eyes that had seen too much death and too much war. "That is what makes us dangerous. Not our strength, not our speed, not our technology. It is the simple fact that we refuse to give up. We refuse to accept defeat. We refuse to kneel, no matter how powerful our enemies are." The ceremony that followed was attended by billions across the galaxy. Catherine spoke briefly, thanking the Crystalline Assembly for their welcome and expressing hope for friendship between their species. But it was her final words that were remembered and repeated for generations afterward. "The Zorath believed that the galaxy belonged to them," she said. "They believed that younger species existed only to serve them. They believed that power gave them the right to do whatever they wanted without consequences." She looked out at the crowd, at the beings of light and crystal, who watched her with something like awe. They were wrong. Power does not come from size or strength or how long your species has existed. Power comes from the willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it seems impossible. Power comes from refusing to accept injustice, even when fighting back seems foolish. Power comes from the simple act of saying no to those who would crush you beneath their feet. She raised her hand. "Still bearing faint scars from the battle? Today, the galaxy knows that humanity will never kneel. Today, the galaxy knows that even the mightiest empire can fall to those who have the courage to fight. And today I promise you this: humanity will always stand with those who seek justice. We will always fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. And we will never, ever accept a universe where the strong are allowed to prey upon the weak without consequences. The applause lasted for nearly an hour in the centuries that followed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Zorith Dominion eventually collapsed entirely, splitting into dozens of smaller states that no longer threatened their neighbors. New alliances formed between species that had never trusted each other before. And humanity, the young species that everyone had dismissed as insignificant, became one of the founding members of the new galactic order. Historians debate for generations exactly why things had changed so dramatically. Some pointed to the power vacuum left by the Zoroth collapse. Others highlighted the economic advantages of the new trade agreements. Still others emphasized the cultural exchange that brought new ideas and technologies to species across the galaxy. But most historians agreed on one thing. The real turning point, the moment when everything changed, was the day Azoroth High. Arbiter slapped a human woman in front of the entire galaxy, and she crushed his skull. Catherine Cole lived for another 40 years after that day. She never fought in another battle. She never killed another enemy. She spent her remaining years as a diplomat and peacemaker, helping to build the new order that her actions had made possible. When she finally died, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93, the entire galaxy mourned. A day of remembrance was declared across hundreds of worlds. Monuments were built in her honor on planets she had never visited. Songs were written about her in languages that humans had never learned, and on Earth. In a small cemetery near the place where she had grown up, her gravestone bore a simple message. It was the same message that had been carried by human warriors throughout history, from the ancient battles